from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 5th chapter, 12th verse. I think that's on the board. Is it? Yes. Okay. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Yam Mayaya Vijayaya Mam Vedanti Jagadguram Tasmai Bhagavate Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Yanmaya Duyajaya Mambadanti Jagadgurum Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Yanmaya Duyajaya Mambadanti Jagadgurum Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Yanmaya Durjayaya Mambadanti Jadgurum Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Yanmaya Durjayaya Mambadanti Jadgurum Tasmai, unto him. Namaha, offer my obeisances. Bhagavate, unto the personality of Godhead. Vasudevaya, unto Lord Krishna. Dhimahi, do meditate upon him. Yat, by whose? Mayaya, potency. Durjayaya, invincible. Mam, unto me. Vadanti, they say. Jagat, the world. Gurum, the master. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the supreme controller. Responsively, I offer my obeisances. And meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the supreme controller. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As will be more clearly explained in the next verse, the illusory potency of the Lord bewilders the less intelligent to accept Brahmaji, or for that matter any other person, as the Supreme Lord. Brahmaji, however, refuses to be called this, and he directly offers his respectful obeisances unto Lord Vasudeva, or Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, as he has already offered the same respects to him in the Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. The Supreme Lord is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the primeval Lord in his transcendental body, the ultimate cause of all causes. I worship that primeval Lord, Govinda. Brahmaji is conscious of his actual position, and he knows how less intelligent persons, bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord, whimsically accept anyone and everyone as God. A responsible personality like Brahmaji refuses to be addressed as the Supreme Lord by his disciples or subordinates, and foolish persons praised by men of the nature of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses feel flattered to be addressed as the Supreme Lord. Why such persons take pleasure in being addressed as God, or why such persons are addressed as God by foolish admirers, is explained in the following verse. The verse again. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the Supreme Controller. Mukam karoti bachalam bhangam longayate girim yat kripa tarham bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. Prabhupada said from the very beginning that the Vaishnavas are always fighting the Mayavadis. Since time immemorial there has been a conflict between worshipping the Supreme Lord as Krishna and worshipping the Supreme Lord as Brahma, the impersonal being. So this is exemplified in this verse. Prabhupada is talking about how people like to be called God, and in many cases he's talked about how people thinking that the world is false, jagat mitya, the world is false. Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya is a slogan that's been adopted by persons that means Jagan Mitra, Brahma Satya, God is truth, and the world, Jagat Mithya, the world, Jagat, is Mithya, false. So that's their slogan, Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, the world is false and God is truth. So that's the essence of the debate, that we can merge into one, that is the highest position, merge into oneness with God or Brahma. That versus the personality of Godhead, that one can have a relationship with Krishna that is an ongoing relationship. That is the superior position, directly opposed to worshipping God as an impersonal energy or force. So he's mentioning here in the purport that the Brahmaji refuses to be called God, and one of the characteristics of Mayavadi philosophy is that if one merges into God, one can become and be called God, and Brahmaji refuses to be called that. And as he said here, people who are endowed with a lower level of intelligence accept being called God, and they think that they are God, and that's the story. It's also indicated here that Krishna is very powerful, and he can even bless those who are impersonalists, even those who are atheistic. They go on. And in one of his lectures, I think it was in 1972, he ended with saying, Johnny Walker is still going strong. There was uproarious laughter because most Americans know that Johnny Walker is a brand of whiskey. So the indication was that even though we pride ourselves in being successful over the last 50 years or so, that the movement is expanding and growing and more people are joining and books are being distributed more than ever, that there's an opposite force that's equally or more potent, that's continuing to go strong, and that is the concept that that everything is progressively getting better through technology, through atheism, and through atheistic technology. We can live forever, we can go to many planets, we can enjoy life, we can live for hundreds of years, we can do many wonderful things, we can acquire many mystical powers of hypnotism, of drilling through rock to make tunnels and fly in the sky and do many wonderful things. So this is what the Krishna consciousness movement is against, that everything is getting better and improving by technology. Once I was in a sort of presentation. It was in Berkeley University, the University of California at Berkeley, in Berkeley, California. And it was a dark hall. Probably about 3,000 or 4,000 people were there. And one of the students, during the question period, asked Prabhupada that, what's the use of all this spiritual stuff? I'm going back to my country, and he detected from the accent that that person was from his land or from India, and they asked, the question was, what's the use of all this God stuff when I'm here to learn technology and go back to where I came from to improve the quality of life in that country? So Srila Prabhupada detected that the person had come from his land, and he said, oh, an Indian? And it's the first time, probably the first time, I saw Prabhupada get angry. And basically his answer was that you, meaning that person who asked the question, are a beggar, and I am a giver. You've come to learn technology, and you want to improve the quality of life in your country. So you're coming to beg. You're going to supermarkets, you're going to movies, you're doing a lot of things that are enjoyable, because there's a great supermarket in this country to enjoy, whether it's in an actual supermarket or just the atmosphere of this country. And he said, but I've come to give spiritual knowledge. I've come to give what my country has to give, not what I'm not here to learn technology and to get money and to improve the quality of life in India. I just want to basically say that God is the essence of everything, and that we can improve. That's the basis of what our land has to give to the world. We have to give spiritual knowledge. That's what is essential. So the first time that I ever went to, I was about 30 years old. I went to India, and it had become nighttime. And I was walking across the field of what is now the Juhu area, what is now a temple, and apparently a car was coming up behind us, and the devotees saw the lights from the car, and they started scattering just like scared rabbits. And I was kind of like amazed, and I asked the person I was walking with, what are they afraid of? It's only a car. And then he pointed to his left and said, that's what they're afraid of. And I looked to the left, and what I saw was a concrete platform about the size of this temple room, and there were about 5 poles, about each one was about maybe 10 centimeters in diameter. And their 2 poles they rose up to a height of about 3 meters, and then they formed an archway at the top. They were shaped in this way. And there was about 6 of them standing. At the base of each one, where it started and where it ended, was a pile of bricks. And all along the sides, scattered around the concrete plinth, were sheets of corrugated iron that had been the roof of a building that had been demolished. And the only thing remaining was these stanchions, these tubes, and at the very far end was a wooden house which was locked, and that apparently was the house of the deities. And just that afternoon, the structure had been completely demolished, and it was demolished because there had been and I thought, wow, this is really strange. Here I am in the land of love, which I thought it was. And here this horrible thing has gone on. And this happened just hours before, during the daytime. And what had happened, the backstory is that there was a great deal of corruption. Bribery was involved, and there was a conspiracy. The owners of the property had paid the the government authorities, the police department, and the workers that did the destruction work to destroy the building. And there was one lady, her name is Maitili, who was the head pujari, who stood with her back to the little house where the deities were, and she had locked the doors. And she was sort of defying all the gundas, they call them in that part of the world, who had come forward to, they were dressed as police officers, so they were police officers, but they had all been bribed. And welcome to India. I thought, this is the land of love, and this is going on. It was kind of shocking, really, to hear all this, to see this. And what had happened was, the backstory is that this lady stood with her arms spread out, with her backs to the locked doors of this little room, which is about 3 meters high and about 1 meter deep. It had the deities of Rasa Bihari in them. And then she left her post to guard the tulsi plant, which was situated just very nearby. And when she left her post, 3 policemen grabbed her, and she grabbed onto one of the metal post tubes, and she wouldn't let go, even though they tried to drag her off. And she held on very tightly. She was a very muscular type of person. And then they started hitting her with these sticks. They call them latas, I think. And finally, she just collapsed and fell to the ground. And then they dragged her across the field to their paddy wagon by her hair and by one leg. and put her in the paddy wagon along with the 3 or 4 devotees that also had been arrested. And people were watching this spectacle. People that lived in the area were just gazing, kind of like shocked, because to manhandle for 3 or 4 men, to manhandle a woman to that degree was a very shocking thing to see in that part of the world. And these people were just gaping. They didn't know what to make of it. They saw this spectacle occurring in broad daylight, and it was more shocking to them than watching horror movies. I mean, it was a real live incident, and they saw the arrests of the men and the manhandling of the woman and the arrest, and then they prepared to attack the one thing that was left standing was the little house of the deities. Well, the inside story is that another thing that happened, I should mention that while this was going on, one of the conspirators who had bribed the police and the workers and the city council, city government, was laughing, and one of the devotees' mothers-in-law, it was Jagat Purusha's mother-in-law, said, and they had called for a blowtorch at that point, and they were going to destroy all the wooden, the metal tubes. She said, just as you, she was kind of a mystic, and she said to the men in a very loud voice, just as you are, to the man who was laughing, she said to him, and it was right almost across the road from where this place was, just as you are burning Krishna's temple, you will burn by fire. And it so happened, very shortly after that curse, so to speak, was said by her, that this man, Mr. Rani was his name, had contracted cancer, and the pain was so great that he doused himself with kerosene and lit himself on fire and died before the ambulance had even arrived. I know this is true because I've read all the details, and this actually happened. I mean, we think curses are sort of like mystical, but it actually happened that way. Anyway, what happened, just as they were about to attack the deities, a friend of the movement, a man who was a very powerful head of one of the political parties in India, made a phone call because one of the devotees who hadn't been a party to the arrest, or hadn't been arrested, was watching from the bushes, and he managed to make a phone call to this man who was a very powerful political party leader. And the man phoned the municipal corporation leader. This was during the day, and everyone was in their office. And he said that you have to call these men off. They're about to destroy what's left of the temple. And the man said, "Well, I can't do this because I'm part of this conspiracy." He admitted that. And then the political party leader said, "Well, you must know who this city belongs to." And then the city commissioner relented, and he phoned his people, and just as they were about to destroy the little house where the deities were enthroned and installed, they stopped because they had higher orders, and that was the incident that occurred during the day. Anyway, it's a very big story. This is just a little part of the grand conspiracy that was going on. It included bribery, and included a lot of crime, and it took several years before the construction actually started. There was a move on the part of the commissioner of the police, who was also part of the conspiracy, had been subject to bribery, who refused to issue them a non-objection certificate in order to build a temple there, and he described in his letter. He put this out in a letter. He described the chanting as a nuisance. This word nuisance was clamped upon by Prabhupada, and he said that here in this land of Maharashtra, that's the province in which this place existed. People are calling kirtan a nuisance. And the land of Maharashtra formerly was very much enamored by a person, a saintly man, a saint named Tukaram. Tukaram, who lived hundreds of years ago, was famous for chanting. And Prabhupada's outrageousness was that here in the land of Tukaram, or in Maharashtra, where people have been raised to think that chanting is beneficial for everyone, it's being called a nuisance by an atheistic police commissioner. He even went so far as to say we should have a sit-down in front of this police head office until the non-objection certificate is revoked, is produced, and we're allowed to build. It was quite a few years till all this stopped. So what I'm getting at is that there's always going to be an atheistic class of men, and as the verse indicates, there's always going to be opposition to the Krishna consciousness movement. And I think Prabhupada got the reputation for being not just a tolerant holy man, but a fighter. And there was an incident that occurred in Bhaktivedanta Manor just after this. I think it was about 1974 or 1975. There was a group of people that came who, one of their publications had to do with Hinduism. I forget what it was called exactly. But the devotees were staging a little drama because the local government in England had said that the devotees weren't entitled to have kirtan or any kind of prayer services there. And so they were in the drama, they were characterized as bad people, and the devotees were innocent, the devotees were godly, the devotees were religious, they were well behaved, they didn't do anything illegal, and yet the local council was preventing them from carrying on their usual daily practices. So they were characterized as kind of evil and not demonically evil, but the devotees were characterized as good, not like as angels, but just innocent, basically. And what happened was that this group of people, following their leader, who was a sadhu of sorts, a bearded leader, walked out before the play was over, which was a very kind of a rude thing to do, you might say. And later on, I found out from the guy who was organizing the drama, the reason that they walked out was they said, well, this isn't Hindu. Hindus are supposed to be tolerant, and yet we're exhibiting this fighting spirit of going against these people who are trying to stop our worship. So what had happened was Prabhupada got the reputation of being a fighter. He wasn't just a tolerant, passive holy man, but he was a fighter for the rights of his people to do their worship. There's another verse in this book, the Bhagavad Gita, that says Titiksha Karunaka Suhridam Sarvadehinam, that one should be titiksha, tolerant, and there are many things we have to tolerate. We have to tolerate abuse from atheists, from hostile governments, from police departments, from people who are of a different religion, who think that this is wrong. There are many things we have to tolerate, but at the same time, we do have to fight back when things are going wrong. We can't just be passively resisting. And at one time, when this whole event of Juhu was going on, and they not only bribed the city officials, but they bribed the conspiracy people, they bribed the media, the press, television, radio, and they were constantly coming out with negative portrayals of what had happened. That was eventually combated and turned around. But in Bombay, there was a newspaper, it was called Blitz, B-L-I-T-Z, Blitz. And they came out with this very heavily excoriating article against the devotees, saying that they had no right to do this, and they were just making noise, and it was bothering the neighbors, and on and on and on it went on. And they were part of the CIA, and they were criminals, and they were just trying to start something in this country, and they were beggars, and so on and so forth. So when Prabhupada learned of this, he said we should file a lawsuit against them. And they didn't file the lawsuit against them. They eventually settled amicably out of court, and the newspaper published not a favorable, but at least a neutral article to say that not that they admitted that they were wrong, but they said that actually they're not bad people, and so on and so forth. So there were times when sometimes people had to fight back. Another incident that occurred, I mean, this was a regular sort of demeanor of Prabhupada to fight back. Well, not that he wasn't very tolerant. He was, for the most part, very tolerant, but sometimes things became intolerable. And one of the incidents was when the festival of the Rath Yatra was banned in London. And it took place in a very sacred sort of place in England called Trafalgar Square. Some of you probably know about Trafalgar Square. There was a big Nelson's column. It's about 100 feet high or 30 meters high. And the devotees had done some wrong things, but Prabhupada was very outraged when he heard that they were banning this. And the strategy was to continue the Rath Yatra, to bring the chariots to the starting point and just sit there until they had revised their ban. And eventually, he had made a compromise to say that instead of having chariots, we would have palanquins. So they had palanquins, and the devotees were in the palanquins, and they were basically colored the same way. And when in Trafalgar Square, they were carried rather than on wooden vehicles, and it went on. And it still goes on today. This event happened maybe about 30 years ago. And now the event is still going on right in Trafalgar Square, and it's become quite successful. So even though the general tendency was to tolerate abuse, sometimes it got to be intolerable. And when this was going on, I was in England at the time, and Prabhupada said, "What are we dealing with? Is this a police state or what? What kind of ban is this?" And he even called some members of the royal family hippies. I mean, he was that angry. Anyways, it went on. So I'm going to read the verse again and maybe take some comments or questions. Let's see, 12. Tasmai namo bhagavate vasudevaya dhimahi yanmayaya duryajaya mam vedanti jagat gurum. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna Vasudeva and the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the Supreme Controller. So we have a few minutes. Go ahead.
Phrase came to my mind. To be religious means to be persecuted. So, can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, to be religious is in a sense to be persecuted. I mean, we know in the case of Christ that he was not necessarily by the government. They were according to the history, they were sort of neutral, but by the Jewish people, who influenced certain people in the government against him, and that he was sacrificed or crucified. And his only sin was that he was purporting God consciousness. I mean, so there's a truth in that. What did you say, that to be religious is to be persecuted? So Prabhupada, in defense of being somewhat active and combative when things went wrong, did say that we have to be willing to fight abuse if it's incorrect or wrong, and he showed by example that sometimes had to be exercised. That if there was sort of unauthorized persecution for no good reason, that may have to be combated, and that was the case with this newspaper. And there were many other things. Most of it he was just tolerating things that had to be tolerated. The devotees who first built that temple, they had to tolerate very difficult conditions when they first went there. They were sleeping on floors. There was no floor. They were sleeping on the ground, on mud. There were giant mosquitoes. The water was all very polluted. A lot of them had diarrhea and dysentery. And there were rats the size of cats that were gnawing silently on their flesh at night and causing them to wake up in pools of blood. And they lived like that for a year, at least 1 year or 2 or 3. So they had to tolerate a lot of abuse, a lot of difficulties. Let's put it that way. It's sort of, you might call it voluntary austerity. They were doing it. They had a purpose. They were wanting to obey their spiritual master, who said that they should stay there, because in that land and in other countries, occupancy is 9/10 of the law, and that turned out to be the saving grace. That they stayed there despite the many difficulties, mental and physical. They stayed there and were victorious.
At the beginning of the class, you made a comment, one who can merge into God and then claim to be God.
What was that? Can you say that again? One who?
One who desires to merge, or who can merge into God, then they claim to be God.
That happens. I mean, there's a section of people in that part of the world that like to be called God, and they think that they are God, and that the argument against it is, can they perform many miracles like walking on water and lifting mountains and things like that God can do? Can they create storms? And so that sort of nullifies the idea that I am God. But people do like to be called God, and it's part of the philosophy of merging into oneness, that we can be called God. But there's a deficiency in that they want to be called God, but they may not know who God is or what God is. There's a lot of misconceptions about God. Some think God is love, some think God is air, some think God is space. So Krishna consciousness is actually the science of God. Science means to know originally, and it's from a Greek word that means to know. It doesn't mean just technology, it means to know, knowledge. That's what God is all about, and this is the science of God. So that's what this is all about, Krishna consciousness. Yes?
What if you can come across someone who is so potent that he can lift mountains and he can walk across water and things like that are like seemingly acquainted in God? How do you distinguish?
Well, sometimes it's difficult because there are many mystic powers that some people have. They can walk on water. They can hypnotize people. They can acquire things in faraway places. So there are yogis that can do that. They can. Some people said that Harry Houdini was a yogi, that he could do miraculous escapes and so on and so forth. And people said that about prize fighters that were very successful. So it's not easy to distinguish, and unless one is conversant with the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, one doesn't know how to distinguish. It's not something that you can instantly know that someone is a cheater or a charlatan, because they may have the demeanor of being very powerful in many ways. So this is part of the study of Krishna consciousness. It's not something that can be learned in one lecture, or can be ascertained by reading one page of one book. It requires a lot of study and careful absorption of knowledge, and discussing it with other people also who are studying the same thing. When I was at university, we were told that if we really want to learn the subject matter, we should discuss it with other people who are reading the same books, if we want to go deeply into the subjects. So it's not, like I said, it's not a simple matter. It's something that, to take people as, instead of being street urchins, as being sophisticated, cultured, intelligent, and educated. It's not an instantaneous realization. It's something that requires a lot of experience. Yes? Okay. I think that our time is pretty much up. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.